had major back problems. He lost his business. He lost his marriage. He lost his house, and he was working. He was part of the homeless in a city in New Zealand, and people get there by a whole variety of routes, but this Housing First initiative only deals with people with complex health issues. And I agree with Ella when she said hiring motel units for these people is a palliative. It's not a solution. And these people are all long-term homeless, and it's an intentional program that works with those people, and its international success rate is 85% of the people after 2 years are not homeless anymore.
But you've still got a number that are not going to adapt or be able to live in a house.
Absolutely, but this is an intentional program that it was trialled, and it comes out of New York, and it was trialled in Hamilton and in Auckland. It is expanding around the country, and I think that, we do pay attention to it becomes a big issue in the media, and so the television cameras are on it. And there was a magnificent program run out of Te Puia Marae in Auckland.
Absolutely. I'm working with them in a research project, and they are doing extraordinary things.
Oh, yeah. And Hene, is it Hene Dennis?
Huri Moana.
Huri Moana Dennis. What a wonderful, wonderful man. And he had just a great team of people around him. And I just find people like that inspiring, because this is difficult work, and these people are challenging at the best of times. And I think we just need to get in behind, like in Christchurch, Jill Hawkey from the Methodist Mission has led this, and we've got ComCare and I can't remember who
Presbyterian Services.
Presbyterian, all working together. And what we have to do is just get in behind those good people, make it succeed. But that's only one part of the continuum of housing challenges that we've got. But it's one that's very visual and very visible for us.
It's very
but there
complex,
are other bits that are also equally demanding.
Okay, but they all measure us as a society, and we're back to that point you raised about compassion. For me, it's about reciprocity. Everything you give, you receive back in other ways, and that's the kind of society I want to live in.
Yep.
Thank you both. We're going to finish on a slimy story today. A New Plymouth woman says she was attacked by an eel while cooling off in a local river. It was a beast of an eel. Apparently, that's how it's been described. Jellyfish in Wellington. We've got eels as well. There's a lot of that going on. We'll go straight to the young woman who's on the phone waiting for us at the moment. Irene Tallett is her name. She survived the eel attack but has a nasty bite. Hi, Irene.
Hi, how are you, Ellie?
I'm good, thank you. Just tell us about it. What happened? We've only got a minute or so left, actually, Irene. I'm sorry to hurry you along, but just tell us briefly what happened.
Okay, well, I went down to the local Tianui stream, which was right near our house, and it was a hot day, so my neighbour and I went down to cool off, and we jumped in off this lovely big flat rock straight into the deep of the water and sort of swam around, and then I went to the other side. And as I thought, I was looking around to think about, just in case there was eels. Hadn't swum there for about 4 years after seeing a eel there 4 years prior, a big one. And anyway, I went back to the centre. It was quite deep, and I felt something come around the back of my leg and drag quite closely, a slimy, large feeling around the back of my leg. And I thought, oh my goodness, was that a rock? No, it's not. It's an eel. It's moving. So I quickly swam back to the other side, and as I was doing so, it came up from underneath me and bit the front of my leg just above my knee and gave me such a fright. Yeah.
Oh, it sounds horrendous, and it bled, and I hope you get back straight into that water, Irene. Thanks for telling us your story today. Short and sweet. Thank you very much, Gary Moore, for coming into the studio.
Thank you very much, Ella.
Henry and Auckland, both have a good weekend. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Ella.
Happy Waitangi Day, everybody.
Yes,
thank you. Same
indeed.
to you.
And Jim will be back with you on Monday, and then, of course, we've got Waitangi Day, and we have Checkpoint next.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, good afternoon. Ko Katrina Bat and tēnei. The townships of Fox Glacier and Haast remain cut off a day after ex-tropical cyclone Fehi devastated the west coast. It blocked roads with slips and fallen trees, brought down power lines and flooded properties on the coast. The highway south of Haast is blocked by a 100-metre slip, while the road north of Fox Glacier, which has no power, is blocked by a 60-metre slip. The Westland Mayor, Bruce Smith, says the slip south of Haast is a big challenge and could take several days to clear. A Civil Defence spokesperson says a 30-tonne digger is en route to the slip north of Fox Glacier, but it won't be there before nightfall and the road won't be cleared today. About 600 tourists are trapped in Haast, but they're being told to stay put as Haast has plenty of clean water and power. A state of emergency is still in force on the west coast. Westland's mayor says the hundreds of tourists stuck in Haast are being well looked after. Bruce Smith says the stranded tourists are benefiting from traditional West Coast hospitality.
They're in a great spot. I mean, they're in Haast. The southwestern hospitality will have kicked in by now. They'll be having a ball. I reckon half of them won't even want to leave. Every one of them's got a bed, every one of them's got food, and the locals are doing what happens in West Coast communities, and they're looking after them.
Bruce Smith says his region has suffered major damage, but he's confident the recovery won't take long. The water supply to the Southland community of Otama has been cut off after a mains water pipe was carried away when part of a flood-damaged bridge collapsed. The Gore District Council says the pipe was attached to the bridge and water has been cut to 250 homes. A helicopter pilot has spotted the missing section of the Pyramid Bridge over the Matori River 50 metres downstream. A council spokesperson says it's wedged and not believed to be a safety risk. A contractor escaped injury when the bridge section collapsed. The council's chief executive, Stephen Parry, says the man was clearing debris and logs when he felt the bridge wobble. He got off unharmed before 50 metres of it fell into the river. Scientists are saying it's not just La Niña that's caused the severity of this week's storm, but climate change. NIWA Principal Scientist Sam Dean says there are a number of contributing factors as to why former tropical cyclone Fehi hit the country so hard.
Climate change is making our storms, when they do happen, more intense. Then we've got that higher sea level, and we've got that increased, rainfall that happens in the storms as a result of climate change. And then it's always going to be the La Niñas, still that underlying natural variability in the climate system that is going to make some years more likely to be stormy than other years.
Dr Sam Dean says with another 6 or so weeks of the tropical cyclone season left, another severe storm event can't be ruled out by the end of summer. Meanwhile, NIWA has confirmed January was the hottest month since records began in 1909. Temperatures across the country hit an average of 20.3 degrees, 3.1 degrees higher than average. The Prime Minister says the government will continue to work alongside Māori around issues of fresh water rights and quality. Jacinda Ardern made the comment at the Iwi Chairs Forum this morning, her first event of a 5-day stay at Waitangi. She was joined by some of her cabinet ministers at the forum, with fresh water rights a key talking point. Ms Ardern says the government's position on who owns fresh water remains the same. She says everyone has a stake in the water, but acknowledges that particularly Māori do. She says right now water quality is a huge part of the focus. Extra firefighters from Wellington are being called in to help put out a fire raging in a remote part of the southeastern Chathams. The fire is currently burning through about 1,500 hectares south of the Waitangi Wharf and is threatening conservation land. 8 volunteer firefighters, 4 Department of Conservation staff and 3 local contractors have been doing precautionary work to protect structures and cut fire breaks. The Principal Rural Fire Officer, Craig Cottrell, says firefighters are being brought in from Wellington and support staff from Auckland tomorrow morning.
We've chartered a Air Chatham's plane, and the first flight will be out of Auckland at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, and we'll put one of our National Incident Management teams on that flight. That flight will also take some fuel for the helicopter. That flight will then fly back to Wellington and pick up 2 local rural fire crews.
Fire Officer Craig Cottrell. 18 people have been injured in central Shanghai after a burning van mounted the pavement and ploughed into pedestrians. Eyewitnesses say the minivan knocked a number of people down before coming to a stop in front of a Starbucks outlet. Some bystanders then tried to break the windows of the vehicle and drag out the 6 people inside. One local news outlet is reporting that gas cylinders were on the van. It's 5 minutes past 5. Sport. She only gave birth to her first child just 4 months ago, but Dame Valerie Adams is determined to win a medal at the upcoming Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast. The double Olympic gold medalist headlines a 15-strong New Zealand athletics team, which also includes runner Nick Willis, shot putter Tom Walsh and pole vaulter Eliza McCartney. The Gold Coast Games will be Dame Valerie's 4th appearance, and despite missing all of the 2017 season due to her pregnancy, she's confident she can podium in April.
I want to go out there and I said do some damage, but the work's got to be done before that, and I'm giving myself the best chance to do that. So, you know, as I say, whatever happens, the Com Games happen. Dame Valerie Adams. The Australian cricketers have suffered a blow ahead of the 2020 Tri-Series opener against the Black Caps in Sydney tomorrow, with opening batsman Aaron Finch ruled out due to an ongoing hamstring strain. And the New Zealand Breakers veteran Kirk Penney is relishing the prospect of back-to-back games against his old team, the Illawarra Hawks, as the race for the Australian Basketball League playoffs heats up. The Breakers and Hawks play in Wollongong tonight before going again in Auckland on Sunday. Penney says he knows the importance of these matches.
You know what they're running, you know, so you always feel like you're a step ahead, and I think it's a great gym to play in, so I'm looking forward to tomorrow. And hopefully, you know, we can all do a good job. So if there's a team to have to go against to try and make the playoffs, you know, I'm happy as the Hawks.
Kirk Penney, that's the news.
You know what I'm talking about. This week on Music 101. You know what I'm talking about. All the best local and international artists from Laneway 2018. In the RNZ Music Mixtape celebrating the Pride Festival, we've got the Top Twins and Possum from Openside. My identity. And of course, we pay our respects to Grant Fell from the Headless Chickens. That's all on Music 101, this Saturday from 1 on RNZ National.
Met service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel. Fine spells and a few showers today. Scattered rain tomorrow with possible thunderstorms and localised downpours. Gales for a time tomorrow. Waikato and Waitomo also Bay of Plenty, Taupo and Taumaranui. Fine spells and isolated showers. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, scattered showers developing this evening and continuing tomorrow. Taranaki to Kapiti, including Taihape, cloudy periods and a few showers, clearing tomorrow morning and becoming fine. Wellington and Wairarapa, Marlborough, Nelson and Buller, showers becoming isolated overnight and fine spells increasing tomorrow. Westland and Fiordland, fine. Canterbury, Otago and Southland, cloudy periods and a few showers, clearing tomorrow morning and fine spells increasing. The Chatham Islands, rain developing this afternoon, easing to a few showers tomorrow. It's 8 minutes past 5.
Kia ora, good evening. I'm Sharon Brett Kelly in for John Campbell tonight. Later in the program, a powerful interview with a recovering alcoholic who says he was told to keep drinking because there wasn't enough room for him in a detox or a rehab clinic. But we begin tonight with the cost of yesterday's storm, which combined with a king tide brought extreme flooding to the west coast and Nelson, causing slips, downing power lines and washing roads and bridges away. Hundreds of people between the towns of Fox and Haast remain cut off tonight after massive slips cut off the towns, leaving them without power and phone coverage and with no means of outside communication. The West Coast Civil Defence spokesman is Andy Thompson. A few minutes ago, I asked him to give me the latest.
People who are south of Fox Glacier, they cannot move north and they cannot go east. Overnight, we had 500 to 600 people in Haast, and so we then found out that the Haast Pass was closed back to the east, so they cannot go back to Wanaka. And we also know that there is a slip over in between the Fox Hills, which is in between Franz Joseph and Fox Glacier. So there is no way they can go north. So what happened earlier today is some people in Haast decided that they would move north to Fox by thinking maybe later in the day they would be able to get out. Unfortunately, there is no chance of that. That road will not be open tonight. And so the problem with that is Fox Glacier does not have a lot of infrastructure. Currently, it has no power. We're busy trying to get generators in there so that the water will work and the sewage system will work. They're being flown in as we speak, but there is no communications into Fox Glacier either. Unfortunately, the cell phone is down and the landlines are down. We're working with some radios and some satellite phones, but the communication has been almost non-existent. So, yeah, we were a bit frustrated when people left Haast, because Haast is actually quite well set up. It's got its own power scheme, so it's got very good power. Water and sewerage was all working there very well. And so they moved from one area which was not the best. Fox also received 117 stranded tourists who were stranded in their cars overnight. When we cleared the road for them this afternoon, they were also taken back to Fox Glacier, and there was no room. Well, they're there being looked after by a welfare centre, but there's not that area is under pressure.
Andy, how many people are in Fox at the moment in this situation?
We simply don't know. We don't know how many people are there. We cannot communicate with them.
So how quickly can you fix that slip so that people can get out of that area?
It's being worked on as quickly as we can. There's West Roads contractors working on it, but they've informed us that it will not be cleared tonight.
How bad is it? I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask, how bad is it? Can you explain what it's like there?
The slip itself?
Yes.
The slip is about 60 metres long. It's on a corner, and it's also on very close to a bridge. The understanding, the briefing that I was given was that it's technically difficult to clear it. It will be able to be done, but it hasn't been able to be done very quickly. What they're working at doing is getting one lane open as fast as possible, so we can get as many people, we'll get those stranded travellers north out of South Westland, because we don't envisage being able to get the Haast Pass open for at least a day or two yet. So the quickest way to get them out is north, but it's not going to happen tonight.
Possibly tomorrow? Hopefully tonight. Hopefully tomorrow we'll be able to get that sorted, but we can't make any promises on that. The West Roads guys, contractors, have to do their job, and they will do it in the quickest way they can. These guys are very, very experienced at dealing with slips on the roads down there. They do it all the time, and quite often they work miracles. And is that your priority, to clear that slip?
Absolutely, it's our priority to clear that slip. The minute we can clear that slip, we can take the pressure off South Westlands from Haast and Fox Glacier and move everybody forward. We can get people from Franz Joseph up to Hokitika. They are being brought up in convoys and being let through by West Roads contractors and being let through a few at a time. And so we are getting traffic coming from Franz Joseph through to Hokitika.
And what other problem areas do you have? East of Haast, there's also slips there?
Yeah, well, east of Haast there are slips there. There's two slips, one at Douglas Creek, and also another one, sorry, just check my notes, Douglas Bluff, and another one at Clark's Bluff. The one at Douglas Bluff is about 100 metres long, and so they have to get to Clark's Bluff before they can get to Douglas Bluff, so they have to clear both of those slips before they can get the Haast Pass open again. But again, there are road crews working on those as we speak.
And that was Andy Thompson from the West Coast Civil Defence. Well, a Kiwi experienced bus driver, along with his 51 passengers, will spend another night stranded at the community hall in Haast. Elliot was driving from Franz Joseph to Wanaka. Spoke to him just a short time ago as the phones were reconnected.
Oh, it was treacherous. It was crazy. There was waterfalls going all over the roads. There was massive floods. It was just chaos, really. To be honest, it was really good knowing that we could go back to Haast, because it was actually a little crazy if I had to go all the way over through to Wanaka, for sure.
So you were turned away at what point?
It was around about half of an hour east from Haast Village, so heading through towards Wanaka. Yeah, it was about half an hour. There was the first initial lane slip, and about sixth vehicle on scene, and they said just do a U-turn and go back to Haast, and that's where we've been since. Right,
and where did you end up in Haast?
Just the village. We're at the town hall. So you were a little bit concerned on where we would stay in that, but the friendly locals opened up the town hall, and that's where we've been since. So we're all pretty much batten down the hatches there for the night, and we've been there since, and we're still here, so yeah.
And what did everybody sleep on? I mean, were there beds and things for you to sleep on?
No, not beds at all, just the hall. We just had mattresses and blankets, and that's pretty much it, yeah.
And you were looked after by the locals?
Yes, the locals have been really good, especially the local cafe. They've been letting me use the phone, keep in touch with my boss, and using the Wi-Fi when they can, but it's not currently working right now. But we've pretty much been isolated from all contacts from about 8 o'clock this morning until now, just recently.
And the tourists on board, I mean, were they mostly overseas tourists? How did they handle it?
Yeah, I mean, some of them are a little bit disappointed, but everyone's in good spirits. Some of them are annoyed that they can't obviously get through to Wanaka because it's delaying their travel plans. But yeah, I think everyone's a little bit restless, to be honest. Accommodation's not the best, and you know, people are just anxious to get to Wanaka and then Queenstown, obviously. So,
what's everyone doing now, Elliot?
Everyone's just crowded around the TV watching a movie. Some people are in the kitchen cooking food, and some people have gone for a little stroll to explore the little village of Haast. Yeah, but that's pretty much it, really. Nothing too drastic. Some of us slept in the bus last night. Yeah.
When will you be getting out of there?
To be fair, I don't know. The word of mouth has it that more than likely we'll be staying an extra night in Haast again.
So another night on the floor of the local hall?
Yeah, or in the bus, yeah.
What's the bus like to sleep in?
Not the comfiest, not going to lie, but we've got like a good TV in there, the DVD player, so we're just watching movies together, really. But everyone's been real well. The locals are putting on a barbecue and stuff for us tonight at about 5 o'clock, so at the town hall they're putting on some snags and other bits and bobs. So. But
you've got showers and toilets and things like that?
Yeah. So we've got access to toilets, not showers though, not for the Kiwi passengers.
And that was tour bus driver Elliot, who's stuck in Haast for another night with his 51 passengers. Meanwhile, our reporter Conan Young made his way from Punakaiki to Westport this morning. He and video journalist Rebecca Parsons-King were forced to negotiate debris along the road caused by washouts. Here's his report from the tiny seaside settlement Fox River.
So you can see here, unfortunately, while most of these batches seem to have survived, unscathed, apart from the large amount of debris in the yard, here the driftwood in the sea has smashed a hole in the window, and unfortunately for this batch, we've had water through it. We've got bits of driftwood that have actually washed right up inside, not looking too good at all there, so a real clean-up job for the owners of this batch. To get to these batches, we travelled through a section of road that has had a lot of debris thrown up on it as well. Whole trees have been washed up onto the road. The surface of the road, the tar seal, has been ground up by the action of the waves which were coming over there. The sand from the beach has washed up onto the road so that you can no longer see sections of the road. It just looks like one continuous sandy beach. Just amazing, the force of these waves.
And that's Conan Young reporting from Fox River, and we'll hear more from him later in the program from Westport, where some residents have been told their homes are unlivable. To Nelson now, where long-time residents say it was a storm like no other. Yesterday's tempest damaged homes and businesses in areas the length of Tasman and Golden Bay, and some may never recover. Today, welfare teams and building inspectors have been door-knocking residents and assessing the damage. Nelson's Mayor Rachel Reese says the power and speed of the storm surge is an indicator of the future, and it will force a rethink of coastal development. Here's our Nelson reporter Tracy Neal.
Homes, businesses, roads and cycleways were no match for the storm surge that raced into Nelson's shallow bays and inlets like a river in flood. As the huge waves clawed at shorelines and rushed into people's homes, Nelson's sailor and charter boat operator Martin Holmes decided to ride out the storm on his boat in the harbour. He says conditions were like nothing he'd seen before.
Oh yeah, the pressure of waves under the wharf area was like setting off like blowholes down the west coast, and there were these geysers surging up from under the wharf. Just looking along the waterfront, the waves that were enough to lift those big concrete pads at the yacht club and burst through the floor of the other places.
People were forced from their homes in Monaco near Nelson Airport, Ruby Bay in the Tasman district, and businesses on the Mapua Wharf had to close when police advised people to leave. Nelson Tasman Civil Defence Controller Roger Ball says yesterday's relief efforts have moved up a gear today.
We've got our urban search and rescue, Red Cross team, also council building inspectors, structural engineers, and they're going door to door in the affected areas. And what we're trying to do is find out where the pain points are and connect people with those that can help them.
The co-owner of a coffee roastery on the Mapua Wharf, Ali Slotamaka, says people did not take the storm seriously at first.
I was quite surprised. I would have thought with it being an ex-tropical cyclone we would have had some prior warning.
She says people on the wharf were getting worried long before high tide.
Yeah, the tide was looking high and the surge was quite aggressive, so the police and civil defence cleared the Mapua Wharf area by about 11:20, and we tried to come back later on to get something out of our business, and yeah, we're told we're not allowed in the area.
Ms Slotamaka says the sea stopped just short of their business, set back some distance from the Mapua Channel. She says if it happened once, it can happen again, and it's likely to trigger conversations in the community about future development. Nelson Mayor Rachel Rees says the city has some serious thinking to do.
Yesterday we saw a volume, a speed, a power of water that we haven't seen before. I know there'll still be climate change sceptics out there, and then it's is it weather, is it climate change, but the reality is that we are going to see more and more of a storm surge, and that means we have to think very carefully about coastal inundation.
Ms Rees says it's going to be challenging for parts of the city, but the community needs to talk about it.
Look, if there's any silver lining that could come out of these dreadful events, if it helps people engage in that conversation, I think that'll be a good thing.
Roger Ball of Civil Defence says while some losses can be replaced in time, others can't be so easily fixed. The popular Boatshed Cafe on the Nelson waterfront is at least one business that has shut up shop.
There's a lot of damage to roading, cycleways, and of course there are a lot of properties with water through them. But we do have some quite high-profile locations that we've lost along Rocks Road and damage to many other places.
Workers and volunteers will be out helping residents over the weekend. In Nelson for Checkpoint, Tracy Neal.
With no grocery or retail experience, a disgraced real estate agent last year bought the remnants of a failed Auckland Nosh supermarket, rebranded it the Grocers Market and hoped for the best. Aaron Drever promised it wouldn't be a repeat of Nosh, the luxury grocery store that went under, owing more than 100 former employees of 6 failed locations more than $300,000 and suppliers possibly more than $1 million. But less than 3 months on, it's deja vu at the Grocers Market. Suppliers tell us they're not being paid, so too former employees. Zach Fleming reports.
Next week. Now it's 4 weeks now. But these guys are paying nothing, a single penny.
Ashish Karana says he's lost count of the number of promises Aaron Drever has broken. The 31-year-old owns his own self-titled company, Karana Cleaning Services, and started cleaning the Grocers Market in November, soon after it opened.
Yesterday I called to Aaron as well. He said, just wait, I will call you after 15 minutes. But nobody calls me. I called to the manager of the Grocers Market, named said, nah, we don't have any money to pay you.
Ashish says it's been 2.5 months now, and his bill is only $1,900. For a large boutique supermarket like Grocers Market, it's a small bill. But for Ashish, who also drives a taxi during the day, it keeps him awake at night.
It's a lot of money for everyone, man. You know, we are here for hard work.
There are at least 6 other suppliers or businesses Checkpoint knows of who are fighting to be paid. Some small amounts like Ashish, others enough to cause severe financial hardship. Vision Fresh, a fruit and vegetable supplier in Tauranga, says it's owed $25,000. It wouldn't comment for the story though, as it's in the process of filing a High Court claim. We started working on the story last week and we interviewed a supplier who says they're owed $31,000. After that interview, we approached Aaron Drever for comment. He said he'd send us a statement. That was Thursday, the 25th of January. We're still yet to receive a statement from Aaron Drever though. Instead, he phoned that supplier and allegedly promised to pay them, but only if they withdrew their consent for that interview to be used as part of this story. Ashish said he got a similar phone call from Aaron Drever. We've chosen not to name that supplier who says they're owed $31,000, and we've changed their voice. But here's what they told me last Thursday.
He promises the world and nothing ever comes through. I had a conversation with him yesterday via text message. He was promising money today, and we've checked our bank account this morning, and again, nothing.
If the name Aaron Drever sounds familiar, it's because he made headlines for having the worst disciplinary record of any real estate agent in New Zealand. He was stripped of his licence in November 2016. So Grocers Market was his second chance. He bought Nosh's former Mount Eden store a month after it went into receivership in July last year, even though he had no grocery or retail experience. Here's what he told me in November last year.
We've cross-checked, double-checked, priced us, made sure we've got budgets, haven't made commitments we can't deliver.
As well as suppliers, Checkpoint's also spoken to 2 former employees who are battling allegedly unpaid wages. I waited outside Grocers Market for Aaron Drever last week and asked him why he hasn't paid some of his suppliers.
I haven't checked our supplier ledger, I wouldn't know.
Why haven't you checked that? You own the business.
Yes, that's true. So we're working with normal business of this magnitude. We carry about $275,000 or $300,000 worth of stock. We basically work through every month.
He denied he owed any former staff money. When I talked to you towards the end of last year, it was the 9th of November, if you remember, this is what you told me on camera.
I personally guaranteed all the supplier agreements that I will personally honour them. Now that means having to sell the house to make that work. That won't be a problem.
So your house will cover everything?
Oh yes.
So do you still stand by that statement?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you going to be able to pay all the suppliers?
Yes.
Are you going to have to sell your house to do that?
No.
But he couldn't say how he was going to pay, admitting the profitability of Grocers Market changes daily.
I guess it needs an operator that's probably got a grocery background to it.
So that's not you?
Well, no, I don't. I like grocery, but I don't. I guess I don't fully understand it because I haven't come from that background. And I've come in from a completely left centre and thought, well, can't be that hard. We just put the goods on the shelves and away we go. But actually, it is. It's a lot harder than. Now, I don't think I've ever worked so hard in my life.
I spoke to Aaron Drever this morning and asked if he'd like to comment for this story. He said again he'd send through a written statement, but we're yet to get one. Last week though, he did confirm to me over the phone that he's in the process of trying to sell Grocers Market and hopes to have the deal done by next week.
If I had a crystal ball and said, hey, would you open a supermarket again? I'd say, well, probably next time I need a bit more grocery experience.
So are we going to see Grocers Market here in 6 months' time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is Aaron Drever going to own it?
I hope so. Yeah, of course.
Aren't you trying to sell it?
Yeah, well, if someone comes along with the right money, you'd sell anything.
But late this afternoon, we learned Grocers Market is trading illegally. In a statement, Auckland Council's Environmental Health Manager, Mervyn Chetty, said his staff visited after queries from Checkpoint and found several parts of the business haven't been registered, including the grocery business itself and the cafe inside. The council's giving Aaron Drever a pass this time, but Mr Chetty said he's been warned of the consequences should Grocers Market ever be non-compliant in the future. For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
Jacinda Ardern was welcomed on her first visit to Waitangi as Prime Minister with baby jokes and a warm reception from prominent iwi leaders. The Iwi Chairs Forum Hui was her first official engagement during an unprecedented 5-day stay in Waitangi. Te Manu Korehi reporter Shannon Honui-Thompson is there and filed this report.
Before the iwi leaders from around the country got down to business with the Prime Minister, they took a moment to offer up a name for her baby if it was a girl.
The offer of Waimiri Rangi was made. The significance of that to Ngāpuhi in particular, Queen of Ngāpuhi, if I described that correctly. Correct. So I think that's it was really an honour to have that suggestion added as well.
Crown Māori Relations Minister Te Tai Tokerau MP Calvin Davis joked he thought someone might suggest Sunny would be a good Ngāpuhi name, a reference to outspoken Ngāpuhi leader Sunny Tau. The discussions were closed to the public, but the Prime Minister said she was heartened by the tone of the hui, attended by around 150 people, especially since the government and the Iwi Chairs Forum share common priorities. She says they discussed issues around water quality, but water ownership and charging water bottling companies wasn't raised.
But I have no doubt that because that conversation has been in place for a long time, that it will continue.
The Iwi Chairs Forum had a strong working relationship with the national government. However, Ms Ardern says she didn't feel any tension during the hui and it was very hopeful.
I certainly wouldn't want to waste time in making progress on those issues that we've already raised today that we can work together on. And so for me, we'll be looking for practical ways that we can bring to reality increased Māori home ownership, more jobs for our rangatahi, and work together on child wellbeing, particularly for tamariki. So there are already clear areas where there's no reason to wait.
The Iwi Chairs Forum has met over the last 3 days and Chairman Mahia Nathan says there has been much discussion about how they were going to work with the new government. Mr Nathan says everyone was happy with the Prime Minister's presentation and to see some commonalities around conservation and poverty issues.
There was nothing contentious in terms of what she said. And the thing that was heartening, I guess, from us as iwi was that a lot of what she said in terms of government priorities aligned with what the 4 pou are in terms of what we have as the Iwi Chairs Forum. So there was some alignment. There's obviously lots of work to be done in that respect.
After meeting with iwi leaders, Ms Ardern and some of her ministers met with Māori wardens, who over the years have become a familiar sight at all Waitangi events. Mo te hōtaka o te ahi pōnei, ko Shannon Haunui Thompson ahau I Waitangi.
It is 29 minutes to 6 and coming up, a recovering alcoholic says he was told to keep drinking because there wasn't enough room for him in a detox or rehab clinic. Dame Valerie Adams on motherhood and her Commonwealth Games campaign, and a Hawke's Bay farmer has a lucky escape when he survived a goring by a bull. We'd love your feedback. You can text us on 2101 and you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, Facebook us, Checkpoint with John Campbell, or email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. But first, here's Katrina Batten with the headlines.
The West Coast townships of Fox Glacier and Haast remain cut off a day after ex-tropical cyclone Fehi swept across the region. About 600 tourists are trapped in Haast, but they're being told to stay put as Haast has plenty of clean water and power. A state of emergency is still in force on the West Coast. The water supply to the Southland community of Otama has been cut off after a mains water pipe was carried away when part of a flood-damaged bridge collapsed today. The pipe was attached to the bridge, which was damaged by debris and logs brought down in floodwaters. And the Prime Minister says the impact of recent major storms demonstrate the government's huge responsibility to prepare the country for the impacts of climate change. Niwa says La Niña, climate change and rising sea levels have all played a role in the severe effects of the latest storm event and warns there could be another severe storm before summer is over. Jacinda Ardern says official reports show the government needs to be ready to respond to issues like sea level rise. Niwa has also today confirmed January was the hottest month since records began in 1909. Temperatures across the country hit an average of 20.3 degrees, 3.1 degrees higher than average. Firefighters from Wellington are being called in to help put out a fire raging in a remote part of the Chatham Islands. The fire is currently burning through about 1,500 hectares south of Waitangi Wharf and is threatening conservation land. Cuban state media is reporting the death of Fidel Castro's eldest son. Fidel Castro Diaz-Balart was a scientist and at one time served as head of Cuba's nuclear power program. He was being treated for depression at the time of his death. Those are the headlines. I'm back at 6.
Thanks, Katrina. Turning to business news now with Jonathan Mitchell. And Jonathan, you've been swamped by data today. What does it tell us about the confidence in the economy?
Evening, Sharon. Yes, well, we had quite a lot come out today. If we start with ANZ, Roy Morgan Consumer Confidence Index for January, really holding ground and improving. I guess in a nutshell, you've got the labour market, that remains strong. The housing market is still relatively upbeat despite some moderation in house prices as well. So people think they'll be better off financially in a year's time. They want to get out there and spend money, especially on big ticket items. Probably noticed a lot of discounting over Christmas, New Year, so big vehicles are in demand. So consumers have an appetite to spend. That's expected to remain relatively robust, but may slow. The rate of growth in spending may slow a bit. Then we had building consents for the month of December. They fell when compared with November by 9.6%, so wiped out the gain. But if we look at Auckland, all of last year there was a 13-year high in Auckland, driven by consents for retirement units and apartments as well. So the outlook for Auckland is that the rate of growth in consents may slow a bit over the coming year. Things like capacity constraints, shortage of skilled staff coming into play. And then there were travel figures. A record 3.7 million people came to holiday in New Zealand last year. On the flip side, 2.9 million Kiwis went overseas. That was a record as well. Feeding into that immigration, so 5,700 people came to live in New Zealand in December or return home. The annual rate was steady at around 70,000. That's the one to watch. The government wants to reduce immigration on the current figures around about half, so we're going to be bringing in fewer people.
And Jonathan, retailer Briscoe Group expects to report a record profit.
Yes, this is for the year to January. $61 million is their forecast at the moment. They had a solid year, $600 million, just over $600 million in sales coming from their Rebel Sport and Briscoe's chains. Online sales picked up over the year as well by about 30%, so they had a solid Christmas, Boxing Day and other holidays as well. We did hear from another retailer a few weeks ago, Kathmandu. They're expecting a better half-year profit, but a red flag has been raised in the retail sector by the Warehouse Group. Restructuring is going to hit their profit.
And what happened on the markets today?
Yeah, we ended the week upbeat, up 31 points to finish at 8,415, and the Kiwi dollar 73.6 US cents and 92 Australian.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. Have a great weekend. Let's go to the weather now with Met Service meteorologist John Law. Kia ora, John.
Kia ora, rather a wet looking at Saturday across the likes of Auckland. Some rainfall moving back up and across us, heavy at times, and I think a rather blustery story as well. Keep an eye on those severe weather watches. Temperature-wise though, around about 24 degrees Celsius for Auckland, and we are going to find things are a lot cooler across most of the country. So our minimum temperatures back to around about 13 or so for Hamilton, but climbing back to around about 24, just that chance of an isolated shower or so. Down towards Wellington, those cooler southerly winds are going to be sticking with us through the daytime, bringing areas of cloud through the daytime, generally staying dry though, but our highs of only around about 19 degrees Celsius and feeling cooler in those winds for Wellington. Likewise, up that eastern coast, it is a fair bit cooler. Hawke's Bay, Gisborne, around about 20, 21 degrees Celsius. Some showers to get rid of through the daytime. Generally an improving story in those higher temperatures down towards Whanganui. For Christchurch, it is a cloudy start with some showers and those cooler temperatures that are sticking with us. Highs around about 18 degrees Celsius, but some of those coolest temperatures will be those inland parts of central Otago. Back down to about 4 degrees Celsius or so for the likes of Queenstown. Improving through the day, highs back to around about 20 degrees Celsius and plenty of sunshine, but just a bit more cloud around the coast. And those cooler temperatures as we head on in towards Sunday and the start of next week. And that's it from me.
A recovering alcoholic says he's had close friends die because there wasn't a place available for them in a detox or rehab clinic. They were told to wait weeks or even months but didn't make it. Andrew Wild and everyone else we've spoken to in the addiction and mental health sector say there needs to be beds available always, because one of the biggest hurdles in treating addiction is overcoming denial. The acceptance that, yes, I have a problem. Once someone gets to that point, they need help, and quickly. But currently, if you try to check in at a public detox or rehab clinic, you'll likely face a month-long wait. And as Andrew told Zach Fleming, sometimes the people who you're asking for help from, like CADS or the Community Alcohol and Drug Service, for example, tell you to keep drinking.
When 29-year-old Andrew Wild finally accepted he had a problem and needed help, One of the biggest hurdles to overcome as an alcoholic, the public health system wasn't there for him.
CADS has turned around and told me once to use controlled drinking. That, sorry, we don't have space for a detox. You have to maintain your drinking until we have space. To tell that to an alcoholic or an addict to keep drinking or keep using, that could kill you.
Which is exactly what his mum Ellie was terrified of.
It's a fear as a mother that you're going to lose your child, because it's just such a desperate time, and any addict or any alcoholic, anybody in need, the care will only work if they ask for help. And both those times Andrew has desperately asked for help. And once you do that, it's getting the care you need. But on both occasions we've had to get him into a private facility because there was just nothing available.
The most recent time was late last year.
We tried to get him into a detox unit, and this started in November. The earliest availability was March. Their hands are tied. The funding's been cut. There's no staff, there's no beds, there's just nothing available. It's our sick healthcare system.
So Andrew, wanting help, recognising he needed help, was facing a potential 3-month-long wait. That was at the Kennedy Detox Unit in Christchurch. Andrew is from Wanaka. The current wait there is 4 weeks, and Kennedy disputes it was 12 in November. It says it was 3, but won't discuss specific cases. Regardless though, if an addict or alcoholic wanted to check in today, they'd have to wait another month because there's no space. CADS, who Andrew says told him to use controlled drinking, confirmed to Checkpoint in a statement that sometimes they do tell alcoholics to do just that while they're waiting for treatment. Because for severely dependent people, withdrawals can result in seizures, hallucinations, or sometimes even death. So people who are that addicted are still told that they have to wait for treatment. Andrew was 22 when he first acknowledged he had a problem.
There's a lot of blanks that I still can't fill in, but for me it would have been probably the end of a week-long bender, what I'd call it. For alcoholics and addicts, it starts off socially. It might have started off at a party, might have started off, I don't know, at a gig, something like that. But we're not the ones that can stop on the Sunday or the Monday. And it turns, it keeps going.
His dad found him passed out in his car. The police had called him because someone thought the car had been stolen and dumped.
I remember Mum walking in just saying, "Do you want help?" And all I could manage out was yes.
So he got help, privately, because he didn't feel like he could wait. Andrew knows he's privileged.
I'm just so lucky and so grateful that I had the means.
But what if he didn't have the money for private? He says he might not be here. He tells me he's lost friends who have died while waiting for help from addiction services.
Personal close friends I would have lost 5 to 10 from purely just because they had to wait. They had to wait for help. Whether it's through overdose, whether it's through suicide. It's one of the most important things possible. I mean, if you're at that breaking point, you need help, you want help, you're finally, that's the hardest thing for an addict, is to first admit that they need help. If you've got to that point, that's when you need to be, you need to get in the doors of these treatment centres.
The government's inquiry into mental health and addiction services will aim to stop those unnecessary deaths and try to prevent addictions developing. The Health Minister, David Clark, wouldn't comment for the story because he didn't want to preempt the inquiry, which is in its early stages. But here's what he told Checkpoint late last year after listening to the story of Natasha Sadler, whose son Memphis died because, like some of Andrew's friends, he couldn't afford to go private.
I think most New Zealanders accept that we are not doing well enough. We've had a 60% increase in people putting themselves forward for support with mental health and addictions over the past decade, and yet funding has gone up by less than half of that.
Roger Green, the founder of The Retreat in Auckland, a recovery clinic based on the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, says that's largely down to addiction not being understood. I asked him how public addiction services in New Zealand have changed in the nearly 2 decades he's been involved.
Not progressed at all. Not progressed.
The Retreat has 30 beds, 25 for primary recovery and 5 for sober living. For people who have gone through the $10,000 month-long program but don't feel ready to leave yet. And if you're thinking that $10,000 for a month is expensive, it's actually around half the price of most private care facilities. The Turning Point in Auckland is $25,000 for a month. Capri in Auckland is $24,000 for 3 weeks. So it's not surprising then that most people turn to the public healthcare system. Like most medical issues, the best way to treat addiction is debatable. But Andrew, Ali and Roger all say that however it's treated, it needs to start being approached like it's a life-threatening disease.
There's also a feeling that, you know, an addict or an alcoholic has only themselves to blame, when in fact they've got an illness which they'll die from. It's a fatal illness and it's progressive. It gets away from you. It's a disease that seems to want to continue on in the person. The individual wants to continue in the disease.
You may as well take a cancer drug off a patient and say, well, wait for another 6 months before we can give you something else. It doesn't work like that. This is a chronic disease. And I think there needs to be more education about that too, that it's not a person's choice, it is a disease. And that disease can be helped by getting them the good care.
There's been an amazing push for, you know, recognition around depression, things like that, other mental illnesses. People don't see addiction and alcoholism as a mental illness.
The Drug Foundation estimates around 150,000 New Zealanders need help with a drug or alcohol addiction, whether they realise it or not. Roger, who's 38 years sober, believes with enough money and the right approach, they can all be helped.
I'm not tempted when I see alcohol at all, or people around me who can drink. The fact is that it's in the understanding that that has happened. I understand that it'll kill me.
Andrew's now gone 86 days without a drink. Like every recovering addict, he's hoping he can add to that number day by day.
You know, I'm lucky enough to have that life, sort of as they explain it, you know, beyond your wildest dreams, but I haven't been able to enjoy it. So I'm ready to go back and enjoy that life.
For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
To Washington now, where politicos are waiting with bated breath to see if and when the President Donald Trump will release a highly controversial memo accusing the FBI and Justice Department of bias against him. Based on classified material, it was written by Republican members of the House Intelligence Committee, which is looking into possible links between Russia and the Trump presidential campaign. The FBI has issued a rare public statement saying it has grave concerns about what it says are factual omissions which fundamentally impact on the accuracy of the memo. The Democrats claim it's an attempt to distract from the Russia investigation. From Washington, here's the BBC's Rajini Vaidanathan.
As he left the State of the Union, the President was asked to release a memo.
Let's release the memo. Oh, yeah, don't worry. 100%. Can you imagine that?
A memo which has been the talk of Washington political circles for weeks. But what's in it and why does it matter? Well, it's related to the ongoing investigation into the Trump campaign's ties with Russia. The 4-page classified document, written by Republicans, is said to allege anti-Trump bias in the FBI, specifically in the way one of Donald Trump's former campaign advisors, Carter Page, was placed under surveillance. They argue that permission to wiretap him was based on unsubstantiated intelligence, which was partly funded by the Democrats. They're crying foul play and party politics. So too are Democrats, who say Donald Trump and his supporters are trying to discredit the work of the intelligence agencies. And there's concern from that community too.
There is a sag on morale. They're troubled by what they're hearing reported, and they know that some of what's being reported, what's being stated and alleged, is just flat out untrue.
By agreeing to release this memo, the President has drawn the battle lines between his administration and the country's intelligence agencies.
And that was the BBC's Rajini Vaidanathan. Well, as April's Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast loom, New Zealand teams across a variety of sports are being named. Today was the turn of athletics, and there was one name in the 15-strong group which sports fans in this country would have been heartened to see back in the fold. Just a few months after giving birth to her first child, a daughter named Ki Moana, shot put queen Dame Valerie Adams is already well into preparations for what will be her 5th Commonwealth Games. RNZ sports reporter Clay Wilson caught up with the double Olympic champion at the team announcement on Auckland's North Shore this morning and asked Dame Valerie what life has been like as a new mum.
Being a mum is the best title I've ever received, and it's hectic, it's hard, it's all of the above, but I wouldn't change it for the world. You know, athletics and my career has become secondary to being a mum to my little girl, so that's been awesome because it's helped me balance life out a little bit better now. Yeah.
So how does it compare with life as an athlete, being a mother?
Oh, so much harder. Like honestly, I've trained the last 20 years, you know, high level and competed at Olympic Games with world champs. Being a mum is so much harder than anything I've ever done in my life. And I don't think anything really prepares you for being a mum or for becoming a mum until you become a mother. Yeah.
So, and what do you think it's done for your, I guess, your training and, you know, getting into that? How has it made it different being an athlete and a mum rather than just an athlete?
To be honest, it's really, you know, made me stronger mentally, but also showed me just how important life is in general. You know, athletics is a very small part of my life now, and being a mum is the most important part of my life. And it actually gives me a really good balance between training and being a mum and just general life, because, you know, I have to get to training, I have to do what I got to do, because then I got to go, you know, I got to think of things like, you know, pumping milk between sessions and feeding times and, you know, waking up at night time when she's grizzly or when she wakes up for a feed and all the rest of it. And then you got to come the next day and be the best you can be at training. So, you know, so much has changed, but as you do as we do as humans, I guess as mothers, you just adapt to the situation and you carry on with it. People tell me that I'm a little bit crazy for doing this and training full time and also trying to look after a baby, but to be honest, I couldn't have done it without the help of my mother-in-law. She's been amazing. She looks after the baby during the day while I'm here at training. It took me a little while to leave her at home though, because I missed her so much, but this is only the 2nd week I've done it. Every other time she's actually come to training with me, then I feed in between, then I go back to training, then I feed in between, and then we go back home. So it's a bit different, but I love it. I love every moment of it.
Yeah. Was there ever a doubt in your mind? Do you think you're always going to come back, you know, when you found out you were pregnant and you were going to have your first child?
Well, no, because right throughout my pregnancy I kept training because I wanted to give myself the best possible chance to come back for the Commonwealth Games. So I put myself in a really, you know, good position to be able to come back as quick as I have. We didn't know what we were, you know, getting ourselves into. We didn't know how we were going to perform, didn't know how my body was going to be, how I was going to be mentally, physically, emotionally, but it's all worked out so far, and you know, I couldn't have asked for a better transition than what we're getting right now.
So what's your preparation going to involve? I guess you haven't competed for a while, so
No.
you're sort of working back up to a competition for the first time in a while. So what are you focusing on, events, that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, so we have our first competition will be Nationals, March the 9th, and down in Hamilton. So that's what we're training for at the moment. I haven't competed in 18 months, so you know that's a very, very long time for me. But in saying that, I'm going to do everything possible that when we get to Nationals, I'll be in the best shape I could be on that day, heading towards the the Commonwealth Games. You know, I'm doing everything in my power right now to make sure that come Com Games, come the 9th of March, that I am in the best shape possible.
Have you set a goal for yourself? Obviously, you're the 3-time defending champion of the Commonwealth Games.
To be honest, I have set goals for myself, but we want to go out there and see what, you know, whatever happens will happen. We don't know. I don't know, but I do have goals. You know, obviously I have to have goals because I'm a very goal-orientated person, but, you know, we have things in place to be able to get to Com Games and do the best we can for New Zealand and to be, you know, we're the fern loud and proud. Yeah.
I guess it'll be just a great experience to be back out there representing again after such, you know, you've probably been pretty full on throughout your career just competing and competing.
Yeah, but I don't really compete to compete, do I? I'm not really known for that. So, you know, I want to go out there and I said, you know, do some damage, but the work's got to be done before that, and I'm giving myself the best chance to do that. So, you know, as I say, whatever happens, the Com Games happen.
Just a couple more things. I guess after the Com Games, have you looked forward from there?
No, Commonwealth Games is my focus, and that's it. I cannot, like, I have a baby, not a newborn anymore, but I have a little baby. I've got full-time training. I have a family. My mind isn't that incredible to try and think about many other things that, you know, I'm going to get to Commonwealth Games and I will reassess.
Yeah. And actually at the games, I imagine you're going to have your wee baby
Yeah,
daughter with you.
there.
So what do you expect that's going to be like at such a high-level competition, having a wee baby daughter with you?
It's going to be different, but I know I'm excited for her to see her mum compete, and, I draw inspiration and motivation from her, and I think, if I see her, just watching me from the stands is going to be a special moment. Yeah.
And that was Dame Valerie Adams talking to our sports reporter Clay Wilson. Well, just days out from the Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang, 28 Russian athletes have had their lifetime Olympic bans overturned. The ruling means they should be able to compete in next week's Olympic Games. But there's still one big obstacle. The International Olympic Committee is refusing to invite them. Here's the ABC's Angus Randall.
These 28 Russian athletes have not proven their innocence, but the Court of Arbitration for Sport has found insufficient evidence to uphold their lifetime Olympic ban. The court's Secretary-General is Mathieu Reeb.
This does not mean that these 28 athletes are declared innocent, but in their case, due to insufficient evidence, the appeals are upheld, the sanctions annulled, and their individual results achieved in Sochi are reinstated.
Russian skeleton competitor Alana Nikitina has had her bronze medal from the Sochi Games 4 years ago reinstated. She's hoping to beat the odds and make it to South Korea next week.
It's a matter of my life, what I do. And when you're accused like that, it's very unpleasant and everything falls apart for you. We're going to hope that we will still make it to these Olympic Games.
11 athletes have had their appeals partially upheld. Their lifetime ban has been scrapped, but they're still unable to compete in the Pyeongchang Games. They'll be eligible for the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing. The Russian President, Vladimir Putin, is less jubilant than might be expected.
We need to not only treat the court's decision with respect, and we are obviously very happy about it, and it proves our position, which is that a vast majority of our athletes are clean and did not commit doping. But we also need to respect the side which we were arguing with. So I think there should not be any euphoria from our side, and we need to be calm about this.
The International Olympic Committee is fighting back. Its spokesman is Mark Adams.
On the one hand, the confirmation of the anti-doping rule violations for 11 athletes because of the manipulation of their samples clearly demonstrates once more the existence of the systemic manipulation of the anti-doping system at the Olympic Winter Games, Sochi 2014. On the other hand, the IOC regrets very much that, according to the CAS press release, the panels did not take this proven existence of the systemic manipulation of the anti-doping system into consideration for the other 28 cases.
If they came from any other country, the 28 athletes would be able to compete in next week's Games without hesitation. But the IOC has a blanket ban on the Russian Olympic Committee. The committee was found to have carried out state-sponsored doping during the Sochi Olympics 4 years ago. It means Russian athletes must prove they're clean before they can compete under a neutral flag. Around 160 athletes have already met the criteria to take part. Russia argues the court ruling shows this group of 28 is drug-free, but IOC spokesman Mark Adams won't budge.
Not being sanctioned does not automatically confer the privilege of an invitation. In this context, it is also important to note that, in his press conference, the CAS Secretary-General insisted that the CAS decision does not mean that these 28 athletes are declared innocent.
The IOC has 30 days to appeal against the decision in Switzerland's highest court.
And that was Angus Randall. A Hawke's Bay farmer has had a lucky escape when he survived a goring by a bull which flipped over his quad bike and attacked. Robert Patallo, who needed a dozen stitches to his head, says the incident on the family farm 15 kilometres inland from Napier yesterday came out of the blue. He told our reporter Phil Pennington what happened.
And one bull just broke out of the mob and snorted a couple of times, and you have that sense of dread that something's not going to go right here. And he came and charged at the bike and the four-wheeler, and I'd hopped off by that stage. Completely flipped it over in one go, and these are 650 kilo bulls, and 650 kilo bull against probably a 350 kilo bike. So, but they're pretty powerful beasts, and it's a bit blurry from there. But he came round. I think I was sort of watching it and thinking, well, okay, he'll probably take his anger out on the bike. But he was mean, and he came round and he caught up with me and pushed me into the ground, gored me a bit, and my quad helmet was pretty well ripped off my I don't know, adrenaline kicked in, and I managed to get back to the overturned quad. I was in an open paddock, so not a lot of cover, and he circled me for probably 20 minutes. Now, I carry a mobile phone with me, but just actually on the bike, and I don't know where that ended up. But in recent times, just last year, we decided to buy personal locator beacons for the team here, and I never thought I'd be using one quite so soon, but was able to just get that off my belt. I was on black, coming in and out of consciousness a little bit, and set it alight, and knowing that within half an hour or so, hopefully the Low Corporation rescue helicopter was going to be appearing over the horizon, which is exactly what happened.
And that was Robert Patallo speaking to our reporter Phil Pennington, and the bull will be put down. After 6 tonight, we'll go live to Hamilton as the city prepares for a sold-out Sevens tournament, and the latest from Westport, where some homes have been deemed unlivable.
RNZ News at 6. Kia ora, good evening. Ko Katrina Batten aho. Civil Defence authorities say the township of Fox Glacier, which is without power, water or communications, has been inundated with storm refugees, and a slip 100 metres long still blocks the road south of Haast, trapping more than 600 tourists there. A West Coast Civil Defence spokesman, Andy Thompson, told Checkpoint some people from Haast travelled onto Fox Glacier thinking they'd be able to go north, but are now stuck there due to another massive slip.
We were a bit frustrated when people left Haast, because Haast is actually quite well set up. It's got its own power scheme, so it's got very good power. Water and sewerage was all working there very well.
Andy Thompson says 117 tourists who spent the night trapped in their vehicles north of Fox Glacier have also been taken back to the township and accommodated in a makeshift welfare centre. He says the authorities are trying to get generators to Fox Glacier to get water and sewage services running again, but the town is under pressure. The clean-up is underway for Westport couple after yesterday's storm left the inside of their home awash with 25 centimetres of water. The water entered the home of Ruth Waitangi and Peter Graham in just a matter of 20 minutes, leaving them no time to save any of their possessions. Conan Young paid them a visit.
Ruth Waitangi says she knew there was a risk of the estuary rising when the king tide hit at the same time as yesterday's storm, but she had no idea it would affect the home she's lived in for 17 years. Ruth, her 1.5-year-old granddaughter and her partner all evacuated to higher ground, leaving their belongings behind. The couple were today sorting through their water-laden belongings to see what, if anything, could be retrieved. As of mid-afternoon, 4 homes on Snodgrass Road, where Ruth and Peter live, had been deemed unlivable by the Bulla District Council. Their house had yet to be inspected. The council expects the number of homes classed as unsafe to enter to increase. In Westport, ko Conan Young tēnei.
The water supply to the Southland community of Otama has been cut off after a mains water pipe was carried away when part of a flood-damaged bridge collapsed. The Gore District Council says water has been cut to 250 homes. A 50-metre section of the Pyramid Bridge with the water pipe attached ended up 50 metres downstream in the Matoda River. Some playgrounds on the South Island's west coast are now contaminated due to floodwater. The area was lashed by wild weather yesterday, blocking roads, bringing down power lines and causing damage along the entire coast. Flooding is still a problem in Bulla, and Civil Defence says contaminated floodwater has flowed through playgrounds in Carter's Beach and Granity. Parents are being warned to keep their children away. NIWA has confirmed January was the hottest month since records began in 1909. Temperatures across the country hit an average of 20.3 degrees, 3.1 degrees higher than average. NIWA says the intense heat was caused by above-average sea temperatures and more northerly winds. Climate scientist Gregor Makara says January's heat was unprecedented.
It was unusual that the entire country seemed to observe temperatures that weren't only just above average, but really considerably above average. So, the majority of observation stations we had observed temperatures more than 3 degrees above normal. And in fact, there are quite a few sites that were 4 degrees above normal, which is essentially unprecedented, particularly for this time of year.
Climate scientist Gregor Makara. The month surpassed the previous record of February 1998, when temperatures averaged 19.6 degrees. Northland Regional Council and Refining NZ say it's frustrating but inevitable. No one can be held accountable for last month's September break in the fuel pipeline between Marsden Point and Auckland. The break and subsequent fuel shortage grounded thousands of air travellers and leaked 70,000 litres of petrol and diesel into the ground near Ruakaka. A lengthy council investigation has concluded it's impossible to find and prosecute a digger driver whose illegal searches for swamp cody are thought to have damaged the pipeline. The Regional Council's General Manager, Colin Dahl, says the chances of a prosecution were slim, given the remote location, the lack of witnesses and the fact the pipe was damaged 3 years before it actually started leaking.
We're dealing with a criminal offence and that means that we have to obtain evidence to prove a case beyond reasonable doubt. So that is the standard required, and in this case we just didn't have the evidence to proceed.
Northland Regional Council's Colin Dahl. Refining NZ estimates the leak cost it more than $10 million. Rescue workers in South Africa have begun to bring to the surface some 950 miners who've been trapped underground for 2 days. They became stuck when a thunderstorm cut the power to the Beatrix gold mine southwest of Johannesburg. The power cut meant lifts could not bring the night shift workers to the surface. Cuban state media is reporting the death of Fidel Castro's eldest son. Fidel Castro Diaz-Balart was a scientist and at one time served as head of Cuba's nuclear power program. He was being treated for depression at the time of his death. The 68-year-old was known as Fidelito due to his likeness to his late father, the revolutionary turned long-serving leader of Cuba who died in 2016. It's 6:05. Sport. The already depleted Australian cricket lineup has suffered a blow on the eve of the 2020 Tri-Series opener against New Zealand in Sydney tomorrow. Opening batsman Aaron Finch has been ruled out with an ongoing hamstring strain that caused him to miss the final 2 ODIs against England last month. Dame Valerie Adams says no amount of training is as hard as being a mum. The double Olympic gold medalist headlines a 15-strong New Zealand athletics team for the Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast in April. Dame Valerie gave birth to her first child in October last year. This will be her 4th Commonwealth Games. She says the last 4 months have been hectic.
I've trained the last 20 years, high level and competed at Olympic Games and World Champs. Being a mum is so much harder than anything I've ever done in my life. And I don't think anything really prepares you for becoming a mum until you become a mother.
Dame Valerie Adams. The Wellington Phoenix defender Dylan Fox says the team are confident they can cause an upset against Sydney FC in their A-League football clash tonight. Going into the match in Sydney, the home side and defending champions sit at the top of the standings, with the Phoenix languishing at the opposite end of the ladder. But Fox says that fact will have no impact on the belief his side takes into the contest.
Last week against Adelaide, obviously didn't go to plan, but I feel if we knock off Sydney this week, we're obviously back in contention, and it's obviously that the spots to 6 are pretty close, so I'm feeling pretty confident the boys can do it.
Phoenix defender Dylan Fox. That's the news.
Tomorrow morning, I'm talking to the biographer of the doctor who gave his name to Parkinson's disease 200 years ago, and to the doctor called the Dean of Digital Medicine. Max Richter encourages his audiences to snooze during his performances, and Peggy Seeger, folk musician and songwriter. Michael Laws, too, defends rodeo. Join me, Kim Hill, tomorrow morning from 8 on RNZ National.
Met service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel, fine spells and a few showers today. Scattered rain tomorrow with possible thunderstorms and localised downpours. Gales for a time tomorrow. Waikato, Waitomo, also Bay of Plenty, Taupo and Taumaranui, fine spells and isolated showers. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, scattered showers developing this evening and continuing tomorrow. Taranaki to Kapiti, including Taihape, cloudy periods and a few showers, clearing tomorrow morning and becoming fine. Wellington, Wairarapa, Marlborough, Nelson and Buller, showers becoming isolated overnight and fine spells increasing tomorrow. Westland and Fiordland fine, Canterbury, Otago and Southland, cloudy periods and a few showers, clearing tomorrow morning and fine spells increasing. The Chatham Islands, rain developing this afternoon, easing to a few showers tomorrow. It's 6:05 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Kia ora, Katrina. A Westport couple are waiting to find out if the council deems their home unlivable after floodwaters submerged it in yesterday's storm. As of mid-afternoon, 4 homes on Snodgrass Road, where Ruth Vaianga and Peter Graham live, had been deemed unlivable by the Bullock District Council. Our reporter Conan Young and video journalist Rebecca Parsons-King have spent the past 2 days on the West Coast. His story begins on the road from Punakaiki to Westport, where he meets Ruth and Peter.
To get to Westport today, we had to negotiate the road south of the town, which only opened mid this afternoon due to massive amounts of debris and washouts caused by yesterday's surging waves. At Fox River, we found a batch that had not survived unscathed. So you can see here, unfortunately, while most of these batches seem to have survived, unscathed, apart from the large amount of debris in the yard, here the driftwood and the sea has smashed a hole in the window, and unfortunately for this batch we've had water through it. We've got bits of driftwood that have actually washed right up inside, not looking too good at all there, so a real clean-up job for the owners of this batch. To get to these batches, we travelled through a section of road that has had a lot of debris thrown up on it as well. Whole trees have been washed up onto the road. The surface of the road, the tar seal, has been ground up by the action of the waves which were coming over there. The sand from the beach has washed up onto the road so that you can no longer see sections of the road. It just looks like one continuous sandy beach. Just amazing, the force of these waves. Ruth Vaianga said she knew there was a risk of the estuary rising when the king tide hit at the same time as yesterday's storm, but she had no idea it would affect the home she'd lived in for 17 years.
It just came over the banks, and you know how tall we are here. Well, it was quite high.
A good metre through your property.
Yep.
And inside your house.
Yep. And more in the workspaces because they're lower. Yeah.
Had you had a chance to put any of your belongings up higher before the water started coming through in that space of 20 minutes?
Well, I was holding baby and I was inside by myself, and Pete was trying to put some things up in the garage, but I didn't have any hands. I had this crying. By then she was crying, and because she's got toothache, and no, I didn't really. Yeah, just had to leave quickly.
Ruth, her 1.5-year-old granddaughter, and her partner Peter all evacuated to higher ground, leaving their belongings behind. The waters having receded, the couple were today sorting through their water-laden things to see what, if anything, could be retrieved.
This is my new studio that hasn't even been signed off, and the water came up to there. So we'd be...
So that's like a good metre, isn't it, off the ground?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. So everything come in, excuse the smell, it stinks. This is where I do my artwork. So anything lower down was just covered in water. It's a potting mix over there.
So still a bit of water left in there?
And artworks that I've had, the older ones that I've had for years, they're just gone, wrecked.
As well as making their home unlivable, the floods have robbed this couple of both their workplaces.
And that's the office where Pete works from. So it's sodden. It's just...
And that's carpet through there that's obviously going to have to go and whatnot.
You can smell it. Yeah, so it came right up. And the files are out, but they're all wet. And you can see my screen printing stuff and plates and things. Yeah.
So you guys both work from home?
Well, we do this year. This was going to be my big year of doing my artwork from home, and not sure how I'm feeling about that now. Maybe I need to get a job.
So you're just sort of just showing us that was again, that's a good metre coming right round the house.
Yeah.
So within 20 minutes it had sort of started coming right inside?
Yep, every room. And we've got a lot of Pete's dad's, precious books and stamp collections, and he died a few years ago, and so they're probably not in very good condition at the moment. Yeah. That's some of his books, so it's all wet.
So this is the stamp collection and things?
Yeah, there'll be stamp collections, and we've got boxes and boxes of his gear, but yeah.
That's the stuff I guess insurance can't replace.
They can't replace that, nor artworks, no. So our washing machine doesn't go. I don't know what's going on there. Probably it's a computerised one, so probably the water's affected that.
So how deep was the water through here?
I've got a wee gauge somewhere.
Oh, here's the carpet. So this is, as you're walking on this, I can see it's absolutely sodden.
It is.
You're just going to show us on the wall here, are you, where it came up to?
Part on the wall. I think they've covered it with material.
Do you remember? Was it?
Well, it was definitely.
So it's like you're putting to like a foot.
Yes. Yeah, it was about a foot all the way through, definitely. Yeah. And so the bottoms of the beds and curtains and anything on the floor, and I had babies, so I couldn't put things up. I could just hear her panic. You know, I guess she got that from me, transferred. Yeah.
As of mid-afternoon, 4 homes on Snodgrass Road, where Ruth and Peter live, had been deemed by the Buller District Council to be unlivable. Their house had yet to be inspected. The council said it hadn't finished assessments here or around the rest of the district and expected the number of homes classed as unsafe to enter to increase. In Westport for Checkpoint, ko Conan Young Tene.
In Dunedin, the clean-up was underway after more than 100 millimetres of rain yesterday caused houses and roads to flood and prompted some evacuations. A state of emergency was declared in the city on Thursday afternoon, but less than 24 hours later, the fast-moving flooding had receded and the declaration was lifted. Our reporter Maya Burry was out in Dunedin today assessing the damage.
In the early hours of this morning, council contractors were out clearing debris and hosing down roads in the wake of yesterday's deluge, which the council says flooded at least 13 homes. More than 100 millimetres of rain fell in Dunedin yesterday, with nearly half of it arriving in the space of 4 hours, leaving flood-prone South Dunedin the worst hit. The rain overwhelmed part of the water network, sending diluted but untreated sewage into at least 4 of the suburb's streets.
The water came in through the front door, as you can feel. It's all affected.
You can hear the squelch under the carpet.
Yeah, you can, can't you?
That contaminated water flooded large parts of the Radius Fulton Aged Care Centre, damage which the facilities manager, Robin Bowie, pointed out to me on a walk around the building. Ms Bowie says they evacuated the 89 residents at the centre yesterday afternoon. She says they will have to strip and replace all the wet carpets and make sure everything is decontaminated before people can return.
It's something definitely we didn't want to deal with. Residents were distressed. This is their home. Of course they didn't want to be shipped out in the night and go to an unfamiliar environment. Very distressing to everyone.
The aged care centre was also badly affected by flooding in low-lying South Dunedin in 2015, when there was damage to about 1,200 properties. Ms Bowie was emotional as she explained how difficult fighting the floods had been, but she wasn't sure what more could be done to prevent the flooding, which had come on very quickly.
We've spoken to the council before. There's not a lot I can say about that. We've spoken to the council before. I think they've done a much better job at keeping drains and clear. And, but there was a huge deluge of water and a very fast time yesterday.
Just down the road from the retirement home, Nelson Street resident Sarah Alexander spent yesterday frantically sandbagging her home, but to little avail as it also flooded. Ms Alexander says the floodwater in her home wasn't contaminated, but she had to get help from the fire service pumping it out of her property.
Absolutely awful. It was knee deep in our street, and my property wasn't affected to start with, and then it got so deep in the street that it flowed through my driveway and pulled in my property. It was about a metre in and about ankle deep, all at the lowest points of the house, so the front of the house, the 2 bedrooms and the back bedroom.
Ms Alexander says this is the 3rd time her house has flooded in 3 years, and she's pretty over it.
I really am. It's really distressing, and it takes a lot of time to deal with the aftermath of it, and having to leave work and things like that. It's not okay.
Dunedin's Mayor, Dave Cull, this morning announced the state of emergency had been lifted. He says no further significant rain is forecast, and the focus is now on the clean-up.
Although there's nothing like the damage to public infrastructure, for instance, that we had in 2015, nonetheless there are a number of residents who had their homes flooded. So the emphasis now is on getting out and supporting them, assessing the damage and helping them.
Dave Cull says the Mayoral Relief Fund has been activated to give assistance to those who need it. In Dunedin for Checkpoint, Maya Burry.
From record-breaking heat to flooding and gale-force winds, New Zealand's had more than its fair share of extreme weather this week. However, scientists are warning this could be the new norm. They're pushing for a better understanding of what climate change will entail for New Zealand and the measures to adapt. Science and Innovation reporter Charlie Drever explains.
First came the heat.
It's too hot for people to come out and actually stand at the van and get ice creams. Unless they've got something on their feet, they can't stand on the concrete, the grass, anything. It's just too burning for them.
Unofficially, my backyard was reading 42 yesterday. We're enjoying every day of summer as it comes. If you complain about the heat, summer can end quite quickly down here. It would be lovely to have some rain.
The rain eventually came, but more than people had bargained on.
It came in so fast, everything, the house, the studio, Pete's office, his motorbike shed, all underwater.
We're just walking along towards Sunset Point, and what a bloody mess. It's terrible. I've been walking down here for 40 years. I've never seen anything like this.
And although such an extreme change seemed to be of nearly biblical proportions, NIWA Principal Scientist Sam Dean says there are scientific reasons as to why the storm hit so hard.
Climate change is making our storms, when they do happen, more intense. Then we've got that higher sea level, and we've got that increased, rainfall that happens in the storms as a result of climate change. And then it's always going to be the La Niñas, still that underlying natural variability in the climate system that is going to make some years more likely to be stormy than other years.
Dr. Dean says while New Zealanders are used to having multiple seasons in a week, things are definitely hotting up.
That natural climate variability and weather variability is happening as it has always happened. But we've had the last few years have been some of the warmest years the planet has ever seen. They've been some of the warmest years in New Zealand. We've had periods of where we've been having relatively southerly airflows, and yet we've still been above average in temperature.
So how prepared are we for the severity that climate change is bringing to these kind of weather events? Motu Economic and Public Policy Research Senior Fellow Susie Kerr says the research into the impact climate change is having on New Zealand is still in its early stages.
We are just developing for the first time a New Zealand-focused Earth system model. We are doing the very first analyses, really, of quite a lot of the impacts like sea level rise, and we still don't have national coverage of where sea level rise impacts are likely to be that have any level of accuracy. So we are making quite significant gains, but it's very early days. There's a lot more work that we can do.
Susie Kerr says ordinary people need better information to inform their decisions, like house buying.
Without knowing the exact details when we're buying a house, what sort of questions we should be asking and what sort of places we might not want to choose to live when we're making big investment decisions, really knowing that we should be asking somebody some detailed questions about what the climate risks might be.
Susie Kerr says while the science is unlikely to ever be perfect, New Zealand needs to build its capacity so it can predict and prepare for climate change as best it can. For Checkpoint, I'm Charlie Drever.
The International Rugby Sevens has come to Hamilton for the first time as the city takes over the event from Wellington. The Waikato Stadium is sold out for the next 2 days, with about 25,000 people expected to fill the ground each day. 16 teams are taking part in the event, and tonight in central Hamilton there's a special launch party underway in Garden Place. Our Waikato reporter Andrew McRae is there and he joins me now. Good evening, Andrew. What's happening there?
Good evening, Sharon. Well, it's a busy night here at Garden Place. This is sort of a fun event
for the city to mark the occasion of the Sevens, the first time it's been to this city, and so like an official welcome. Most of the teams, or all of the teams, the 16 teams are here. Not every member, but at least 1 or 2 members have been introduced to the crowd. There's lots of fun events going on, and they're even going to, even though the event is sold out, they're going to be giving away a few tickets later on. So basically a fun event to enjoy the atmosphere and this lovely weather.
And is the city well prepared for this event?
Well, the city's buzzing, really. The teams have all been here since Monday, and we're talking about 350 plus players and officials, so it's a lot of people to accommodate, but they've all been accommodated, and each team needed its own practice venues, so it's been quite a logistical organisation. The event has sold out, so we've got 24 to 25,000 people attending the event tomorrow and on Sunday, and around about 60% of those tickets have been sold within this region, and the rest are coming from outside. Of course, a lot coming down from Auckland. It also means that there's going to be a lot of, benefit for the local businesses. They're estimating something like $5 million will go into the local coffers. It's cost around about $2.5 million to stage the event. So even before it starts, it's being seen as a real success, and it's likely to remain here. Well, it's certainly going to be here next year, and promoters are keen to have it for a bit longer than that as well.
And Andrew, the Sevens has a bit of a reputation as a party event with alcohol really playing a big part. So what's being done to keep things orderly?
Well, that's always a problem with an event like this. It's 11 hours for 2 days in the hot sun, and alcohol is being sold at the stadium. One of the ways they're going to get around it is by around about halfway through the afternoon tomorrow and on Sunday, they're going to stop selling full alcohol beer and getting more of a lighter beer being on sale. They think that might help towards any drunkenness. Hard to say whether that'll work. The other thing is that there's lots of things going on around the stadium, so people aren't sort of tied to have to stay in their seats the whole time. They can move around, get a bit of food and a bit of fresh air and a bit of shade and that sort of thing. The police are going to have a strong presence at the game and in the city afterwards. They said they're not going to be too much in the face of people, but they're going to have that strong presence. They're hoping for people to behave and to be responsible, but if anything goes wrong, they'll be there to crack down on it. And the other thing is all the streets around the stadium will have an alcohol ban for the entire weekend, pretty much as the streets of the CBD do every other night. And after the games, of course, tomorrow night particularly, a good number of people are going to leave the stadium around about 9 o'clock and head down to the bars, cafes and nightclubs at this end of town. So it's certainly going to be a very, very busy weekend.
And finally, when does New Zealand play?
Well, we're in the pool with France, Argentina and Scotland, so a very difficult pool. The first game New Zealand plays is against France tomorrow. That's around about 1:20. But the actual first game of the entire tournament is 11 o'clock tomorrow when Kenya plays Samoa. And one of the co-captains of the New Zealand side, Scott Curry, said the other day that gone are the days when you can just expect New Zealand to go straight into the semis. Most of the teams here have a chance of winning. So, and also, of course, New Zealand has the hometown advantage. But then with Fiji and Samoa playing here as well, there's going to be a lot of local support for them. So it's going to be a fairly exciting weekend, no doubt, Sharon.
Great, Andrew. Enjoy it. Thanks very much. Finally tonight, this next interview you'll either love or hate, depending on your taste for hit Disney musicals. Actor of screen and stage Jonathan Groff, who parents of younger children will know as Kristoff from Frozen, is in Christchurch. He's been teaching the next generation of musical thespians at the Christchurch International Music Theatre Summer School. He's sat down with RNZ concert Zoe George to answer the tough questions sent in by Kiwi kids via the RNZ Vox Pop app.
Broadway star Jonathan Groff, aka Kristoff from Frozen, and Holden Ford from Mindhunter.
Yes.
Kia ora, welcome to New Zealand.
Thank you. Kia ora.
Kia ora. All right, we've got some questions from kids.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Bring it, yes.
All right.
Hey, I'm Bella. I was wondering what you were doing when you first found out you were going to be on Frozen.
Hi, Bella. When I first found out I was going to be on Frozen, I was in an apartment in Chicago, and my agents called me to tell me that I had gotten the part. but I was in the bathroom or something and I missed the call, but there was a voicemail. But the voicemail was not them telling me I'd gotten the job. The voicemail was them thinking they had hung up, and we're all saying to each other, okay, so I guess we'll just call him back in an hour or something. And the casting director was also on the line, and she said, will you please make sure that I'm also on the line when you tell him that he got the job, because I love being on the line for these calls. It's like why I do what I do. And so I found out I got it through kind of a conference call where they thought they had hung up, but accidentally left me a voicemail.
Hello, my name's Genevieve and I'm 6. What's your favourite song from Frozen? Mine's Do You Want to Build a Snowman?
Oh, I'm just gonna go really cliche and say Let It Go. I just love that song so much. It's the defying gravity of Frozen.
My name is Hannah and I'm 7 years old, and who's your favourite character in Frozen?
Hi, Hannah. My favorite character is Olaf because he's so funny.
Hi, my name is Ben, and do you like video games, and if you do, what is your favourite?
Ben, great question. I grew up playing I don't play modern video games, but I grew up playing Nintendo obsessively. I played Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega. It was almost like the Game Boy, but I can't remember what the equivalent of that was for Sega.
I was just wondering what your favourite ice cream flavour was.
Was and is black raspberry.
My name is Anna. I'm 9 years old and I like musicals. What's your favourite musical?
Anna, it's not even fair because you didn't even tell me your favorite musical. If I had to pick one in this moment, and it's Ask Me Again Tomorrow because it would be different, Chicago.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Jonathan Groff.
Absolute pleasure for me as well.
And that's Jonathan Groff talking to RNZ Concert's Zoe George, and that's Checkpoint. Have a great weekend.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The township of Fox Glacier has been inundated with storm refugees, although it's without power, water and communications. Meanwhile, the state of emergency on the west coast is still in force because of yesterday's storm. The water supply to the southland community of Otama has been cut after today's collapse of a flood-damaged bridge near Riversdale. And fresh water rights have been a key talking point between the Prime Minister and a forum of Māori leaders at Waitangi today.